A medieval chess set, a bust of Napoleon Bonaparte, a handwritten letter to Patsy Cline, a deed to a castle in Scotland, and an antique chandelier that would make the Phantom of the Opera weep. These are but few items that I found at the world's saddest garage sale, and the inspiration for my new song, The Antique.
Wooden walls and metal squares, antique spoons and chinaware, and DVDs of season 5 of Friends.
The story of The Antique goes that I was wandering around Nob Hill in San Francisco and I came upon this garage sale that was full of some of the most interesting, eclectic items, almost humorous, and it told the story of travel and insight and history. And over time I started to realize that all of these items belonged to the same person, the same woman. And I was overcome with this intense sadness, and I just was fascinated with this collection, with this older woman's story. And I ended up going home that day and writing The Antique. One fun fact about The Antique was that for a while I refused to play this song publicly because I was convinced it was too sad. Now, I consider myself a fairly positive person, but I love sad songs. I noticed that people I would see this dark sadness reflect on people's face when I would play it. I just was like, I don't want to make anyone sad. I want to make people feel whimsical and happy. And I had a friend of mine who booked me for a show, and I sang that song, and he just goes, that is like my favorite song of yours. It's amazing. And I just go, are you sure you don't think it's too sad? And he goes, no, in fact, I think it's like, sadness is okay to feel. It's okay to be sad. And if it's in a profound way, then sadness is not necessarily a bad thing. And I was like, you know what, Milo, you're right. I'm gonna start singing that song at every gig I do. And I ended up putting that song on the album. So shout out to Milo, he's the reason why Antique is on the album. Hello and welcome to the show and tell portion of this program, in which I display for you items that are in my apartment for some reason that may or may not be haunted. Let's begin with these dudes. So this is actually part of a set. They're these little tin canisters made in, I want to say, the 30s or the 40s. They are made in England, and we used to have them on our shelf in my first ever home. And the head pops off, and inside you can store whatever you want in them. We stored tea bags. So whenever I smell Lipton's tea in particular, I always think of these guys, and I always think of those first few years of my life. So as a musician, I like to collect eclectic instruments. And this was one that was given to me by my cousin for Christmas one year. For those who are unfamiliar, this is called a balalaika. It is an instrument from the Soviet Union era, and there are supposed to be 3 strings, but one of them popped off, so now there's only 2. And although it's a little out of tune, the strings are very, very old, you can play a little something like this. Now, when people first visit my apartment, the first thing they might notice about me is that I love frames. I love frames. There cannot be a single wall in my abode that does not have something to look at. Now, one thing that's lesser known is that I like to collect pictures, like antique pictures of people I've never met, and I have no idea who they are. People that have interesting vibes and energies. So here are a couple. This one was given to me by my friend Raven. It's this early Edwardian woman, it looks like. Do I know her name? Absolutely not. Do I like her vibe? 100%. Same thing, this is a tin type of some late Victorian women. Absolutely fabulous fashion there. Okay, this guy I found at an estate sale in Redwood City. Incredible frame, great hat. I am about 90% sure that this picture is haunted. I swear I've seen it blink at least twice. Now, he doesn't look like he was possibly the most friendliest man, but maybe this is like a Home Alone situation, which the creepy old man ends up being like a real sweetheart, so I like to think of that as this. But anyway, he's been hanging on my wall for like 7 years now. The story of this one was that I was walking around Golden Gate Park here in San Francisco, and I found this photograph in a bush. It was like just under a bush of this couple. And I stared at this picture for a while, and I ended up finding a perfect frame for it. And I put it on my wall, and I recognize exactly where it is. So this is the photograph. You can see that the man is wearing a military uniform. The wife is also wearing a particular fashion that was popular in the 40s. So this tells me this was during World War II. And for some San Franciscans, they might recognize this building right here. This is the Cliff House, right by Land's End. And I know exactly where that spot is. Exactly that spot. And this couple's story might be only known to their family, but I find this picture so charming, and it just reminds me these people had a love story. These people had a meaning and a childhood, and I don't know, maybe are they still alive? Are their children around? I don't know. Are they still in San Francisco? I don't know. I hope so. Speaking of frames, this one was one of the funniest things I've ever seen at a thrift store, and I just knew I had to take it home. It's a collage that was made in the 60s. So there's these two women on a chair that are screaming and they say, "Eek a mouse," and there's this old man running. This collage was made by somebody decades ago with a thought and a goal in mind, and it's been in my kitchen for like 5 years. Speaking of kitchen, I like to add a little bit of whimsy in every room in my apartment. So this is an example. This is a salt and pepper shaker holder. It's a little frog on a bicycle. There's not much of a story to that. So this is a great conversation piece of mine, and when I invite people to my apartment, they sometimes get a little concerned because they see this on my writing desk and they say, "Veronica, what are you doing? Why is there a gun on your desk?" And I say, what you see isn't always the truth. This is not a gun. There's no way for a bullet to come out of here. This is a lighter. It's an old lighter that I got from a friend of mine. I usually use this as a little party trick to have people guess what it is. Nobody ever gets it right though. It makes me feel kind of like a badass. I do not own any firearms, for those who are curious. Now, this is a model toy of a Louisiana paddle boat, and it is actually a radio from the 70s. You can see the little knobs right there. And you can also see on the side here that it says Mark Twain. I have kept it, even though it does not operate nearly as good as it did when I bought it, because of this Mark Twain part. So there is this legend on my dad's side of the family that says that we might be related to Mark Twain. I don't know if that's true, so don't quote me on that. We like to think that we're related to Mark Twain. I don't really know. I'm a writer, so it's whimsical for me to think about, oh, I might be related to a great writer, but whatever. This is still cool nonetheless. And the last thing I would like to show you today is possibly my strangest, most beloved collection of items that if there was a fire in my complex, I would run to grab these things, and that is my collection of Toby mugs. For those who are unfamiliar, they are little cream cups in the shape of people's faces, almost always old people for some reason, and I find them to be hysterical. Maybe that's the weird, creepy old lady in me. Here are some of them. Okay, this one was my first one. Little old lady, darling. This one's my most recent one. It's the Mad Hatter. Just has a sign on the back that says mad, so don't piss him off. I got these guys. They're brothers, so I always keep them together, and I always thought this guy looked like an old manager of mine. You never know. I got these old coots. I also keep them together because they're in love. I've got the children here. Love this guy. Look, the handle is a quill. And look at his cheeks. He's so mischievous. Look at that eyebrow raise. Oh my god, I love him. And that concludes my display of strange objects. I hope that you have enjoyed it. The Antique is up on all streaming platforms, and it features the talents of Jamie Wilson and myself on guitar, Shira Kamen on violin, and Peter Mond on percussion. Give it a listen, and I will see you in the next video.